Have you ever woken up, opened your phone, and thought to yourself first thing in the morning, did the US quietly become China with just a few extra steps? Because that's actually what's happening right now in America. And it's being sold to you as, think of the children, please. Now, for about 20 years in America, the internet mostly ran on this idea of permissionless innovation. You want to encrypt your traffic? Fine. You want to use a VPN? Whatever. Tools were neutral. Privacy was boring. Nobody cared. But that era is now over. Now, guys, if you didn't know, I'm kind of the VPN guy here on YouTube. This is going to be a short, quick ad for myself. If you want to know what the best VPN is, if you want to read real user reviews on VPNs, check out vpntierlist.com. This is a community-driven website where users could leave their own reviews. As you can see here, it's aggregated into a tier list. You also have my expert ratings. I'll be putting my links from my top VPNs down in the description down below. We could get 4 extra months and 80% off. If you don't want to use my recommendations, go check out vpntierlist.com. Read real user reviews where people write reviews of VPNs, and back to the video. Between 2025 and 2026, you are watching the end of the neutral, anonymous internet in real time. Not because one big law passed, but because a bunch of different systems are all attacking the same thing from different angles. Here's a couple things you got. Federal laws and executive power built around national security. State laws built around child safety and public morals. Courts that are suddenly way less interested in anonymous free speech, and ISPs being pushed to act like the mini NSA clones inside each state. I told you a while ago, internet regulation is good, and not regulating internet service providers and corporations generally is bad for privacy. Stack that all together and what you get is the Great Firewall of America, just like the Great Firewall of China. Now, let's start at the state level because that's where the mask has fully slipped. We're now at a point where US states are openly targeting VPN providers. Michigan tried it first, and now Wisconsin is taking the baton and sprinting with it. Why? Well, because they're trying to enforce age verification laws for adult content and harmful material. That's the branding, right? Protect the kids, please. But if you look under the hood, what they're actually doing is building backdoors for internet surveillance for kids and adults. Now, age verification sounds innocent, right? Until you remember how it actually works. You're not just clicking, I'm over 18 anymore. You're also uploading your driver's license, your ID, facial scans, selfies, and biometrics. And we already know how that story ends, right? These systems have failed before. We've had age verification systems get hacked, Discord has leaked sensitive info, and services like Authentics have seen IDs of both kids and adults exposed online. We're in the age of the internet data breach. So when a state says, we want everyone verified online, what they're really saying is, we want a giant honeypot of ultra-sensitive data that will get breached sooner or later. And we're not going to be held accountable for it. And if you want to sue us, go ahead. Maybe you'll get a couple bucks. But let's talk about Wisconsin now. They've got AB 105 and SB 130 moving through the legislature. If these pass, Wisconsin becomes the first state in America where using a VPN to access certain content online is explicitly banned. I guess it's also kind of bland too if you think about it. Now, this doesn't not kind of conflict with VPN use. It doesn't make VPNs harder. They directly go after VPNs themselves. The logic is this. We force adult sites to verify age. VPNs let people bypass that. Therefore, VPNs are now a loophole we must close. And it kind of makes sense in that logical level, even though all of it is kind of illogical in the first place. So what do? Well, they tell websites if someone is using a VPN, you have to block them. Doesn't matter if they're 42 with 3 kids. Doesn't matter if they're a journalist, researcher, an abuse survivor, or an international student. VPN is suspicious. Block it. And here's where the tech reality kicks in and completely exposes how dumb this really is. A VPN is an encrypted middleman. It's a site between you and the website. The site sees the VPN server, not your house in Wisconsin. So if a Wisconsin resident connects to a VPN server in France, the website just sees France. If they connect to Chicago, the website sees Illinois. It's almost impossible for a website to say, yes, this IP is technically a VPN, but behind that VPN is definitely a Wisconsin user and not someone in France. They just can't do that. So websites have two choices. Risk being sued by Wisconsin and gamble on detecting specific Wisconsin VPN users, or just go nuclear and block all traffic VPN globally. And a ton of these sites, especially the one with legal terms or legal teams, are going to pick option number 2, the nuclear approach. That means journalists lose a key privacy tool being VPNs. Abuse survivors lose a safe way to browse without their abuser tracking them. Businesses lose a way to protect their business on sketchy Wi-Fi. International students lose access to websites they use back at home. Researchers and activists lose critical security tools. All because one state decided to declare war on a protocol they just simply don't understand. And this is exactly the kind of VPN hostility you see in authoritarian regimes like China. Russia and China block VPNs to control what people can see and do. All the apps people use are pretty much government owned and pretty much just huge honeypots of surveillance data. Now you have politicians in the free West doing the exact same thing and acting shocked when anyone points out how bad it is. And here's the extra stupid part. Banning commercial VPNs doesn't actually solve anything. If you ban a well-known audited VPN, people will just switch to worse tools. Random open proxies they found in a forum, dirt cheap VPS services with zero security, sketchy browser extensions that log anything, and free VPNs on the App Store based in China that instead of selling your data back to the US, you're selling it to China anyways. So you don't really get safety. You get people chasing shadier workarounds on infrastructure that's even easier to surveil and exploit in the first place. Now, zoom out from Wisconsin and Michigan, and you see the same pattern at the federal level, just with a different excuse. Federally, it's not protect the kids, it's protect the homeland. Hi-ya! The Restrict Act was framed as a TikTok bill, but it's really a massive power grab over software and networks. It lets the Department of Commerce ban tech that touches foreign adversaries, China, Russia, Iran, etc. And then it has this magic word in it, evasion. If they ban an app and you use a VPN to access that app anyway, that could be as read as evasion of a prohibition. And suddenly you move from a guy using a VPN on the couch with your schlong out, jerking it, to a guy technically violating a federal sanction. Have fun in prison, why don't you? On top of that, you got how the hell do you even say this? PAFACA? P-A-F-A-C-A? Which is basically the TikTok divest or die law. Its real power isn't about TikTok. It's about how it forces Apple and Google to enforce VPN bans through the App Store. That's the exact mechanism you use if you ever want to bury VPNs outright. Then you have Commerce's ICTS rules and the Kaspersky ban, which basically say if your software touches certain countries in the supply chain, we just nuke you from the US market. A lot of VPNs have global infrastructure and investors, which suddenly becomes a liability, not a strength. Just to be clear, I do think Kaspersky could have been a Russian asset, but it kind of ties into this idea of how do you decide what should be used by people or not. So it's something to think about. And hanging over all this is a new wave of protect the children from AI bills, like the guard-style age verification mandates for AI platforms. You want to use a chatbot? Well, cool. Show your identification. Verify your age. And oh, by the way, they might decide they can't safely serve you if you're on a VPN because they can't prove you're not a minor. So now AI, adult content, and a growing chunk of social platforms start quietly blocking VPN traffic by default just to avoid legal risk. You're starting to see where this is going. Everything's going to be blocked and eventually. And the courts, they're not really rescuing anyone. We've already seen big rulings signaling that anonymous access is no longer protected default. The line from the Texas age verification case is brutal. Adults do not have a First Amendment right to avoid age verification. That's the new philosophy. Anonymity used to be treated like a core part of free speech, especially online. Now it's reframed as a luxury, something you might have in special context, but the government can take away anytime it says kids or safety. And you're probably neither one of those things. You're not a kid and you're not safe. And that's the legal side. Let's talk enforcement, how they actually try to kill VPNs. ISPs get pushed into 3 tools. IP blacklist, they could block known IP server IPs. Port blocking, shut off ports commonly used by VPN protocols, but a lot of VPNs have various protocols and ports they could kind of switch to evade this. They could also get new server IPs. The more they try to block VPNs, the more people probably want to use VPNs. So the VPNs are probably making more money in the first place. They could always use deep packet inspection to inspect the traffic patterns in the encrypted tunnels. But a lot of VPNs actually can kind of bypass this as well. But I would say deep packet inspection is probably the most dangerous one. DPI can look at handshake patterns, packet size, timing, and say, yeah, that looks like WireGuard, even if you're on port 443. That's exactly how China's Great Firewall works, and it is somewhat effective at blocking VPNs. I myself have never been to China, and it's hard for me to test these VPNs in China. Some people still do use VPNs in China, but the tools are just like kind of more obfuscated and kind of hidden and not blatantly advertised. But like I said, there's a lot of tools that the privacy world uses. VPNs like NordVPN have the Nord Whisper protocol, which are good at avoiding these kind of blocked VPN measures. You also get stealth protocols out there, ShadowSock's V2Ray, and other couple of protocols that are effective at unblocking and kind of obfuscating deep packet inspection. So what you end up is not what we solve the problem. You just end up with a technical arm race inside the US borders for various different protocols that VPNs are probably going to implement very quickly. So it's just a huge waste of taxpayer money in the end, with remote workers having difficulties using VPNs, businesses being kind of interrupted and stuff like that. Marginalized communities or people who can't afford VPNs suddenly get blocked and have less information access than they had before. So what do we do with this exactly? How do we fight against it? Well, I think we need to normalize VPN usage. We need to use it. We need to protect it and use it like something that's protection, not necessarily something that hackers and perverts use. It's only suspicious if people use VPNs if they're, trying to evade laws that shouldn't be made in the first place. If everyone uses a VPN for basic privacy, it's not something that can be banned as much. If you live in Wisconsin, I encourage you to contact your representatives about these laws, AB 105 and SB 130, and tell them that this is unacceptable, not just for adult content, but for workers, businesses, abuse survivors, journalists, students. And if you don't live in Wisconsin, treat this as a warning shot. These bills are templates. If they work in these states, other states will copy them, and we're going to see more restrictions on VPNs. Other organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation and other digital right groups have been fighting these fights for years, and they're ones trying to figure out the bills, contact legislators and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, these organizations are not as huge as corporations, and their power can be somewhat limited. But here's the bottom line. We're moving away from an internet where default was freedom to an internet where the default is suspicion. If you're using a VPN, you might be someone that's a pervert maybe, or maybe you're someone accessing websites you shouldn't. Well, maybe these websites shouldn't be blocked in the first place. Maybe the Great Firewall of America is something that should never be created. Look at China. It's a good country for a lot of cultural reasons, but it's also an authoritarian regime where free information is not a luxury, it's not a right, and people can't speak out against the government or risk being disappeared. So guys, if you want that to be America, well then do nothing. But if you don't, it might be time to do something. Use a VPN, go to vpntierlist.com to check out my recommendations. See you again very soon.